Chapter 475. Regardless of the presence of the attendant, the expression of the man who poured the milk himself hadn't changed one bit since Emperor Kalusa had left. But just because his face remained the same, did it mean his thoughts did too? Yudhir opened his mouth quietly instead of telling him not to do it. Are you alright? What's there to not be alright about? Kishir, who skillfully poured the milk without spilling a drop, looked at the milk he had collected and responded. Didn't I tell you? The plan was just to introduce you and have dinner tonight. The Emperor has become familiar with your face and deemed you a valuable asset. That should be enough for now. ... The Emperor didn't leave in anger, so don't worry that I might be upset. Unless, of course, you're considering ending your attempts at treatment. Of course not, right? Eyes filled with trust curled up gently with a smile. Just as he had said, regardless of what Emperor Kalusa had uttered, Yudhir had absolutely no intention of quietly giving up or retracting his attempt to treat him. Yet, the reason his heart felt slightly unsettled was because until just before the topic of treatment had come up, the two had looked at each other like the best of brothers. Even without exchanging affectionate words, one could easily guess how much they cared for each other through their gazes alone. It was an aspect of Kishir that Yudhir had never known. It was also an expression that Kishir, whom he had known in his previous life, had never shown. More precisely, perhaps it's something I could never have seen. Yudhir thought as he swallowed the cold, sweet cream that wrapped around his tongue and set his spoon down. Of course, I have no intention of backing down at this point. The Emperor seems to want a definitive solution, so I intend to provide one by the next time we meet. Good, and don't forget that I should have a place in that effort too. After finishing dessert, Kishir naturally stood up and led Yudhir outside. His strides were unhesitant, as if it didn't matter that there was no one to guide them. Shouldn't we wait until the steward arrives? It's fine, the carriage is probably still parked at the back door. We can just ride it back. They probably expect that I won't be returning anyway. ... However, as they were heading towards the back door to escape, Kishir suddenly stopped and shifted his gaze somewhere. The ease that had filled his face momentarily clouded, and a low murmur escaped his lips. I feel a familiar presence. Sure enough, a procession led by noble women and several maids soon appeared. Yudhir was pondering this unexpected encounter when the noble woman also seemed to notice them and stopped. With her hair, which was almost silver, elegantly coiled up, she lifted the veil that had been half covering her face and smiled. Oh my, Duke Paleta, I wasn't aware you would be here today. Has the imperial ban on your entry been lifted already? Your Highness, the Empress. Kishir greeted with a reciprocating smile. Yudhir too bent his knee in courtesy. The Empress signaled with her hand for them to rise. As you said, it hasn't been lifted yet, but I caused a small incident last night that startled His Majesty, and I received a letter as a result. So I have come for a brief visit. Ah, if you're talking about last night, then... The Empress slightly parted her lips as if she found a clue. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand, glancing around. My goodness, I thought as much. I figured if anyone could do it, it would be you, Duke. I'm not sure whether to say I'm pleased to meet your expectations or to first admire your wisdom in immediately identifying me as the culprit. As Kishir raised an eyebrow in mock contemplation, a small dimple appeared on one side of Empress' cheek. Her face, previously as solemn as a wet flower, finally brightened. They seem closer than I thought. Conversing with the Empress, Kishir felt like a mischievous younger sibling, contrasting his formal demeanor around the Emperor. The Empress seemed equally at ease. She had previously always sat quietly like a shadow or a statue, but now her gaze toward Kishir was warm and vibrant. I came here to personally deliver flowers I have grown in the garden, she said. Instead, the maids following her held bundles of delicately wrapped flowers. Would you like to have some refreshments at the palace before you leave? While the invitation is tempting, I fear the emperor might finally impose a permanent ban on my entry if I accept. I have a companion with me, so let's save it for next time. Understood. You have bought a cavalry member, I see. Only then did the empress truly notice Yudhir's presence. If you have bought a cavalry member, could it be the one that's been the talk of the town lately? Yes, he is Yudhir Ale, my assistant. He even greeted His Majesty today. Kishir responded with palpable pride, smiling at Yudhir. As I thought, I heard he was quite young, but I had my doubts. My apologies. Yudhir bowed his head and responded dispassionately. The empress hesitated for a moment before asking an oddly specific question. Since you are ill, you must have also met His Majesty today. Yes. Considering the Duke's temperament, the sudden occasion must have been difficult for you. Did you also share a meal? It was a question laden with implications. After a moment of silence, Yudhir answered, Yes, as you have mentioned, it was an unexpected occasion. However, thanks to His Majesty and my superior, I experienced no difficulty and had an honorable and overwhelming opportunity. Thank you for your concern. I see. I'm glad that you had a good time. His Majesty also seems to take a liking to you, which makes me even more curious about you. It's a shame we don't have more time to talk. She had put her veil back on. I should go before it gets too late. May both of you have a peaceful journey. Just as they were about to part ways in opposite directions, Kishir suddenly spoke. The truth is, I didn't just come here today to get scolded. The Empress halted. Do you remember the last thing I told you during the Harvest Festival party? ... I came to show you the result today. His Majesty seems to think it's too late, but I told him I don't think so, because the one by my side told me so. The Empress turned her head once more. Yudhir felt her gaze on his face, but her expression was inscrutable, concealed behind her veil aside from her tightly sealed lips. Moments later, the Empress turned away and left. Her attendants also followed, retreating from the scene. What did you discuss with Her Majesty the Empress during the Harvest Festival party? I briefly mentioned the situation after the retrieval of the red stone. I assured her that everything would work out. Kishir responded softly as they walked towards the carriage. It seems you worry about His Majesty's health even more than I do. The distance from the Dawn Palace, where the Empress resided, to the Sun Palace was considerable. Yet she had walked that far without a carriage, merely to deliver flowers and not to see the Emperor. This likely corresponded with the reason both had arrived and departed the welcoming ceremony in separate carriages. Yudhir sensed this even without an explanation. Besides, mentioning it in advance ensures that Her Majesty will scrutinize why we visited today and perhaps support us in future endeavors, don't you think? The inexplicably bitter feeling he had earlier vanished as if it had been a lie. Yudhir realized anew that the man beside him never made a careless move. I didn't realize you had that in mind in such a short span of time. It was a nasty trick I could pull because I know His Majesty's weakness better than anyone else in this world. Finally, climbing into the revealed carriage, Kishir whispered with a secretive smile. It's unthinkable from the outside, but the only person who could bring down His Majesty is Her Majesty herself, just like the only person who could bring me down is standing right in front of me. Yudhir's perception of Empress had always been vague, in both this life and his previous one. But the moment she had looked at him, seemingly to indirectly inquire about the Emperor, her gaze was clearer and stronger than anyone else's. Emperor Kelusa's Empress, Rosa Faria Laor. Even the name, long buried under layers of forgotten memories, became vivid at that moment. ... And so, considering we've wrapped up this evening's dinner well, as his whisper grew softer, more inaudible, only Kishir remained in Yudhir's field of vision. The carriage had not yet left the palace grounds. This shouldn't be happening. Yet, even as he thought this, Yudhir leaned his head against the hand that caressed his cheek and closed his eyes. Moments later, their lips parted, and a sweet scent filled the air. It tasted like the ice cream and cinnamon cookies they had just eaten.